Welcome to another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. Unfortunately, Marco is still in Australia. We would ask that you would continue to keep him in prayer, keep Davey in prayer, keep the whole team in prayer. Also, David Lister. I believe they might be in New Zealand now. I'm not sure. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but we've heard some great reports. A lot of brothers and sisters coming together, praying, and just having sweet fellowship with one another. So praise God for the work that he's doing with the Moriel team there. And I'd like to go ahead and welcome our panelists today. First of all, you can, as many have reminded me many times, you can't have Catching Up with Jacob without Jacob Prash. How are you doing, Jacob?
Blessings, dear friends. Wonderful to be with you. I'm just back from Ireland. We have the Moriel Conference coming up this week with Pastor Tim Keller and myself, and that'll be the Submergent Church here in England. And then, Lord willing, all being well, I shall be joining Mark Jackson in India. And after that, the Lord has other plans. But right now, wonderful to be back.
Good to have you back, Jacob. And everything was great in Ireland.
Better than expected, particularly in the Republic of Ireland. Things went always go well in Northern Ireland, and they did this time, but they went better than expected in the Republic of Ireland. Not that I chased numbers or anything, but attendance was double what was anticipated in County Roscommon.
Oh, praise God, praise God. Good to hear that people are hearing the good news. And my friend, my brother, my co-host, my left to his right.
Yeah.
My peanut butter to his jelly. Ken Smith.
How you doing, Jay? Good to see you. Week number 2.
I know. Yeah.
I'm a fill-in.
No. I think this needs to be a permanent thing now.
Oh wow, 2 shows a week. Wow. I don't know. Jacob was just telling us how many he does, and I don't know if I could even hang with that.
Yeah, I don't want to do that many shows either.
Yeah, I don't either.
Well, we just want to thank you. We want to remind you, of course, that everything you hear on Moriel TV, whether it be a Bible study, whether it be Ken's Corner, whether it be this episode of Catching Up with Jacob, is available on podcast. You can find it on Podchasers, Amazon Podcasts. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, of course. And you can download, listen to them anytime you want to. And what's better? It's free. There's nothing currently on the schedule that we can go over, so we can just jump right into our first story. Jacob, you have an update. The British reaction to the Israeli war.
Yeah. Before we go there, I would just like to, once again, as always, encourage our viewers concerning where to watch us. YouTube is highly restrictive. Facebook is no friend. But we have our own servers, our own platforms. We have Moriel TV, Moriel.tv, MorielTV.org. We are also on Rumble. And then there's RTN and various other platforms. Please go to Rumble. Please go to MorielTV.org. Go to Moriel.tv. We'd encourage you not to watch us where we can be censored or given strikes by people who don't like conservative Christian positions, or pro-Israel positions, or pro-life positions. Social media is no friend of freedom. We are. That's the first thing. The second thing I would just very, very briefly like to point out is my thanks to those who've been supporting Moriel's work for believers in the army in Israel. It's been tremendous. We send these things, these packages, to believers serving in combat units, and they share them with their comrades and say, these are socks, first aid kits, whatever, from born-again Christians in the United States, in Britain, Australia, Canada, who love Israel and the Jewish people and are standing with us. The Israelis are quite aware of the incredible growth of anti-Semitism and the Holocaust resembling outpouring of Jew hatred globally. And when they see people who believe in Jesus saying that we're standing with you, we're praying for you, these are gifts from believers who stand with you and want to support support your right to exist. It means a lot, and it opens opportunities for evangelism. It is also a substantial witness in itself. So our thanks to those who've been making the contributions to Moriel. We are looking to make a major financial grant to a ministry that simply helps believers in the Army and in the reserves pretty soon. And again, it's been the generosity of God's people that's done this. We're only asking for prayers. That's what's most needed. But if anyone is inclined to help the believers in the military and to help the believers to distribute help military as a way of engaging them evangelistically and so forth, just go to the Moriel missions page, Moriel Israel on the missions page, and send a contribution and just designate it Soldiers Fund. And we guarantee every penny, every cent will go directly to believing soldiers. But once more, thank you so much for all those who have contributed and who are contributed. It means a tremendous amount. This ugly, terrible mess and this growth of anti-Semitism does present an opportunity for the gospel. When Jewish people see that there are Christians who love us and stand with us in the face of anti-Semitism, in the face of Islamic terror, in the face of media bias, and these people are our friends and are standing with us, praying for us, sending us thermal socks, sending us first aid kits, sending us practical things that we need, and footwear. It means a great deal. It means a great deal. So thank the Lord, and thank you also. Sorry about that. Go ahead, James.
Jacob, let's first talk about Suella Braverman, the controversial Home Secretary in the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's cabinet. There's talk that she's going to be fired for divisive comments about pro-Palestinian protesters. Let's talk a little bit about that.
She was not opposed to their legal right to protest. What she was opposed to is the police bias by the left-leaning police leadership. The police leadership, it's very much like the FBI in America. You have the FBI with a left-leaning political Gestapo-type leadership. Well, there's a British equivalent of that, particularly in the Met, the Metropolitan Police, but it's throughout the nation. Muslim gangs of pimps, organized gangs of pimps, were pimping off underage British girls. And this was all suppressed so as not to offend the Islamic community in a place called Rotherham. Things like this have happened in various cities throughout the UK and especially in London. The police are just pandering. While they are very forceful in any kind of right-wing protest, when it comes to Islamic militancy, even though the Muslims are saying the most outrageous things, supportive of Hamas, a terrorist organization, the police are letting them get away with things that other people would not be allowed to get away with. This bias is endemic in Britain. You see them going after street preachers, but not radical Islam preachers, not homosexual, lesbian activists. They go after Christians. This is the policy of the police, and it's because of the leadership. Suella Braverman is an Asian. She's from Goa. Now, most of India had at one time been British. Goa is an exception. Goa had been Portuguese. She's from a Catholic family background, but she's completely Asian. Yet she's a British patriot. This just shows that had it been someone who was white, a Caucasian, saying these statements about militant Islam, they would have been accused of racism. They can't accuse her of racism because she's a woman of color herself. She's a British patriot. You know, she's like Candace Owen in the United States. They can't accuse her of racism, so they accuse her of being a patsy for the white racist establishment or the black face of white racism. This is the kind of thing that happens. Well, there's a British equivalent of that. What you see happening in the FBI, what you see happening in the media, what you see happening with the left. There's a British equivalent of that. There's also a British equivalent of rhinos, rhino Republicans. There are those who are conservative in name only. The Conservative Party is split, those who are supporting her remarks and those who are opposed to it. Now, all she is calling for is equitable treatment of civil disorder by protesters, especially those engaged in hate-motivated speech, insightful speech that is racially driven against Jews. That's all she's saying. Yet she's being condemned and saying she's interfering with the police. And she's trying to restrict the police or tell the police. She's the Home Secretary. She's the equivalent of the Attorney General. Yet she's being told her actions are inappropriate because she is complaining that the police are not being equitable in the enforcement of hate crimes and in violent demonstrations. Black Lives Matter being allowed to get away with the most unspeakable things. You've got the British equivalent. She's spoken out bravely and with integrity. But she's facing demands for resignation, not only from the left and the mainstream media, the BBC, etc., but from the panderers within her own party. Much the same as the Bush dynasty pandered to Saudi Arabia in the Republican Party and people like Cheney. You've got that same thing in Great Britain. They're making her the villain when all she has done is stand up for law and order and opposition to hate crimes and anti-Semitism and violent protest, demanding that the police equitably apply the law to all parties, not just to people who have a conservative orientation or a right-wing orientation, but also to those with a left-wing orientation and to those who pursue an Islamist agenda, a pro-Hamas agenda. And they want to get rid of her for that. She's a woman of integrity. She's a woman of courage. And she's an Asian. I do pray for her. I ask people to pray for Suella Braverman. I thank God that there is such a Home Secretary. I assure you, if she's removed, whoever replaces her is not going to be a person of that kind of integrity or courage. She's a wonderful, wonderful Home Secretary by the standards of modern British government. You couldn't have somebody better. And I'm glad that she's there, and I hope God keeps her there.
Jacob, for those who don't know British politics as well, does her fate solely rely on Rishi Sunak?
In the British system, yes, political pressure within the party. He would have the power to ultimately fire her, or he could order her to make a retraction. And if she refused to make the retraction, she'd have to resign from the position as Home Secretary, although she would still remain in the party as a member of Parliament. What that would do, though, is it could divide the Conservative Party and make her a viable opposition candidate to Sunak, which I think would be a good thing. I'd much rather have her than Sunak as Prime Minister.
Very interesting. And do you think Rishi Sunak kind of favors getting rid of her for political expedience?
I think he's going to do whatever is in his best political interest, but he's walking a tightrope. At the moment, he's in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting situation. Now, also going on in Great Britain, something that you told me about, Jacob, in the pre-show, the British Veterans Day is being hijacked at the same time. So we're seeing an erosion of what is essentially patriotism for the UK at the same time. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Unbelievable. It is called Armistice Day, which is roughly the British equivalent of the American Armistice Day, which was in November, no longer really celebrated much, and Memorial Day. It is a day when Britain commemorates the memory of those killed in the First and Second World Wars, and it honors disabled veterans. They sell these red poppies that you clip on your lapel, and the money goes to charities supporting these disabled veterans. Some of them are blind, some of them are in wheelchairs, many of them are old. It's called, they sell these poppies. this is the British Armistice Day. It's a very important day in Great Britain. People on the Sunday of that week, if it falls on a Sunday, will go to church, who normally would not go to church, just in honor of the memory of those who have fallen in battle in the First and Second World Wars, the war against Hitler and so forth. It is a big day in Britain, and there is a national ceremony. It's something called the cenotaph. There are a number of cenotaphs throughout Britain. These cenotaphs are war memorials. The main one is on Whitehall in England near number 10 Downing Street, where the king will place a wreath, and there will be a parade and a procession of military and veterans, going back to old gentlemen who fought in the D-Day and things of this will be in the procession. It's a big deal. It's on television. It's a time where people show respect to the military heritage of Britain in the Great World Wars. And it's a time of charitable events on behalf of disabled veterans. It's a big deal in Britain, a very big deal. And it's sacrosanct. The Islamic community is trying to hijack it. They want to turn it into a pro-Hamas, anti-Israel demonstration day instead of the British Memorial Day. And the laws on the books allow them to do it. There's been a whole political battle about keeping them away from the cenotaph in London. One cenotaph in the north of England has already been defaced by Free Palestinian spray painting and graffiti and things of this nature. They're defacing cenotaphs. An aged World War II veteran selling poppies on behalf of his comrades who are disabled from the Second World War in the rail station in Glasgow, Scotland, was beat up by a gang of Muslims. This disabled veteran selling poppies was beat up by a gang of Muslims and left-wingers in a railway station in Glasgow. This is what radical Islam is doing in Britain. This is what Suella Braverman is opposing, and this is why they want her to resign. They are actually trying to hijack the Memorial Day, the day set aside to remember the war dead and to run charitable drives on behalf of disabled veterans. It is unspeakable. It just shows you that so much of the Islamic community has no loyalty to Britain whatsoever. Mm-hmm. They just want to Islamize Britain. Again, it's an Obadiah 15 situation. As you've done to Israel, it will be done to you. They are simply being intimidated and bullied by the Islamic community and by the pro-Hamas demonstrations with their hate speech, their lies about what's really happened. And now it is not just anti-Israel. They're demanding to take over something that is sacrosanct in British culture. And the political left is aligned with them and letting them get away with it. It is legal to ban certain demonstrations in Britain. Demonstrations have been banned in Northern Ireland. Demonstrations by the ultra-right, the British nationalists who are actual racists, have been banned. Why will the Islamic marches not be banned, at least on the Day of Remembrance of the War Dead? Why are they not being banned? You did it to the political right. You did it to the Orange Orders, who most of them are not terrorists, but they still had their marches banned to keep the peace in Northern Ireland, where I just was. Now, they're moderates compared to the Muslims. Why are they being banned? Why when the Muslims aren't? Admittedly, the extreme right, there is a racist right in Britain, sort of like what the Ku Klux Klan type was in the United States, that kind of thing. They exist in fairly small numbers, but their marches have been banned through Islamic neighborhoods. But the Muslims can get away with anything. What others are banned from, the Muslims are allowed to do. And the Home Secretary who speaks up against it is facing castigation for objecting. That's what it's come to. If this continues, it is inevitable that what Israel is doing in Gaza, you are going to see that kind of violent confrontation taking place in London, in Birmingham, in Bradford. There will be a civil war of some description between the ethnic British and the Muslim immigration community, in the opinion of many people. I've been saying this for years. If the British government and if Western governments do not stand up against radical Islam, it is going to fuel a racist right reaction. It will come to that in the United States as well. We are letting these people who behave like barbarians close down Grand Central Station at rush hour on a Friday afternoon and close down the Brooklyn Bridge and riot in Los Angeles. Sooner or later, there's going to be patriotic Americans who are going to allow themselves to be drawn to the extreme right. People who would not otherwise want to go in that direction will be drawn to it because the corrupt government will not protect them from radical Islam. No country that has allowed Islamic immigration has not reaped the whirlwind. Donald Trump, for all his other mistakes, actually knew that. He was absolutely correct. Islamic immigration must be restricted and controlled, but it wasn't, and the left didn't want it. And now it is becoming even more serious. Nobody right now is saying the Christians who are from Armenia with Nagorno-Karabakh should be allowed into the United States. Nobody is who are being persecuted by Muslims. Nobody is saying that Christians being persecuted in northern Nigeria should be brought as refugees to the United States. Nobody is saying that. But you've got Alexander Ortega-Cortez saying that Palestinian Muslims, radicals, should be brought as refugees to the United States and given social benefit. You've got a Muslim Lord Mayor of London, a Muslim, who himself has said, we have to accept terror as a way of life in modern society because that's the way it is in the Muslim world that he comes from. He is saying we should have Muslim refugees, bring in more of them. And the First Minister of Scotland. It's absurd to have a First Minister of Scotland who's not Scottish. Nonetheless, from the Scottish National Party. Nonetheless, he's there saying to bring in radical Muslim from Gaza as refugees into Britain so the British taxpayer can give them benefit and support them, and they can bring their militancy with them. This is what is happening. It is unbelievable. But I do believe, as I've said repeatedly, a reason it is happening, it is God's judgment on the Judeo-Christian world for having turned their back on the faith of the New Testament and on pandering to Israel's enemies. We've seen Israel's enemies pandered to by Bush, repeatedly by Obama, and now by Biden. It will bring God's judgment, and it is.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention, because this has been in our Rumble chat room, veterans in UK are being told not to wear their medals for their safety. And
Yep.
What's even worse is I can draw a direct parallel to what Israel is telling their citizens abroad not to wear anything that could identify them as Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a scary world we live in, where we're seeing a repeat of history before our eyes.
Notice it comes upon those who pander to Islam. The Jews have to hide their identity. Now, British war veterans who were in prison camps, who were wounded, some of them left blind, crippled in wheelchairs, cannot wear their medals on the National Day of Memorial in their own country because Muslims don't like it. How is this justice? Well, if the Jews aren't going to get any justice, either is anyone else.
Well, this also began in the United States as a movement to tear down
Yes.
Statues of war monuments from the Revolutionary War, all the way through to the Civil War. And again, when nothing is sacred, everything is hoisted as sacred for the mob.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're seeing. Moving on from this, even though we could talk about this topic for a while, I wanted to stress that, Jacob, I believe that what we're seeing run through the world, especially with the pro-Palestinian movement, with the Holocaust denying, with the one-sided nature of Palestinians as victims and Jews as war criminals, I think we're seeing the spirit of Haman from the Book of Esther. And
Absolutely.
Ken, as you so perfectly pointed out, the spirit of Haman is the spirit of Antichrist.
Absolutely.
It's the spirit that has come not only to hate God's people, who begin with the Jews, but eventually will find its place for believers of Christ. Now, we know that there are mounting calls to bring Palestinians from Britain, from Gaza to Britain, to the United States, to Canada, to Greece, and Spain. However, there's a little hitch. I'm going to share a video real quick. Here is a riot going on in Spain. Now, the Spanish news is claiming that this has to do with Catalan. But as you pointed out, Ken, the real issue is that the Spanish do not want Muslim immigrants. They firmly believe that Spain is a Christian country.
Christian country, yes. And it only takes one country to successfully get rid of the demons. The whole world will follow. If you police in Spain are refusing to follow orders because they have used they're being used for political reasons. So, but it's a couple other countries too, but Spain's the main one that they're protesting in. They're standing up for the Christian rights.
Let's understand two things. First of all, concerning Spain. Spain was invaded and occupied by the Muslims. They built Alhambra in Granada. Ferdinand and Isabella, who franchised Columbus, fought to liberate Spain from the Islamic invaders. Remember, Islam has a long memory concerning jihad. You will find Muslims in North Africa who believe they have a divine mandate from Allah to go back and take Spain and Portugal, because in the Islamic doctrine of Dar el-Islam, Allah gave it to them and it belongs to them. They think they are entitled to Spain and Portugal as they think they're entitled to the Balkans. That is their mentality. If it was ever conquered and occupied by Muslims, Allah's given it to them, and you have to accept their religion and their right. You have radical Muslims who believe they have to reconquer Spain. And there are people in Spain who know that. Secondly, concerning Haman, remember, Haman was an Agagite. He was an Amalekite, okay? He went to Persia, and he turned another country, not the Amalekites, the Persians, against the Jews. Well, that is exactly what the spirit of Haman does. Muslims come to Britain, Muslims come to Canada, Muslims come to Europe, Muslims come to the United States and to Australia and try to turn other countries against the Jews, exactly as Haman did. So you are precisely correct in drawing the comparison to Haman.
Going back to the conquest of Spain, as I recall, the conquest of Spain, it was under Muslim rule for almost 600 or 700 years, if I'm not mistaken.
On and off.
On and
There
off.
were always pockets of resistance and things, but yes,
And
the
it-
Muslims controlled Iberia.
Yeah, and you know they would have gone into France if it wasn't for Charles
Martel.
Martel.
Charles Martel stopped them in the West. King Jan Sobieski stopped them in Central Europe, Vienna, and the Khazar Empire stopped them in Eastern Europe, in the Caucasus.
And there is no one in Europe that is doing the same today. In fact, via Turkey, I think we're seeing what could not be done. I believe Jacob said this before. What could not be done under the Ottoman Turks, we're seeing done by the EU.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. Unfortunately, you are more than right. However, there's another dimension to this. They see immigration as the path to continuing the jihad, of sending refugees, and that the infidel should support us and give us social benefit. That's the jizra. It's the tax you have to pay for not being a Muslim. They're simply forcing Sharia on Western civilization with the backing of the European left. The colonization of Europe. Remember, they tried repeatedly with the Saracens. They tried in Spain. They tried in France. They tried in Vienna. They tried in the Caucasus. They've tried repeatedly to colonize Europe. And they were always stopped. What we see now is not without precedent, but it is still different. The closest person to resemble what Charles Martel did or what Jan Sobieski did was Milosevic. Now, I'm not saying Milosevic was an angel. There was no good guys in the former Yugoslav war with the Croats, the Serbs, and with the Bosnian Serbs, the Croats, and obviously with the Kosovo Liberation Army. There were no good guys. Nonetheless, Milosevic was trying to defend Europe from an Islamic invasion. The Kosovo Liberation Army were aligned with Al Qaeda before September 11th. Whose side did NATO take? Whose side did Bill Clinton take? Did Javier Solana take? Whose side did Tony Blair take? And whose side did Wesley Clark take? They took the side of the Muslims.
Yeah, it's sad. I don't see anyone that's popularly being supported, but yeah, the Balkans is a reminder of where we are at. Want to talk about this further because now we're going to move from Europe, and we're going to talk about here in the United States. And here in the United States, we have who I like to call Haman's handmaiden. Her name is Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. Tlaib has been censored by the United States Congress. They pointed that she uses the phrase "from the river to the sea," which is considered by most rational people that it is calling for the end of Israel's existence. However, Tlaib interjects. It is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. Delusional, or is she just lying flat out?
Both.
Look, if I was to put up a billboard saying white people support the Ku Klux Klan,
Yeah.
I was to say it's not about being anti-black, it's about being pro-white. It's nonsense. It's just racism. Well, there's no difference. She's a liar, and her religion allows her to lie, the doctrine of Hudna. We have something. Her being censored will mean nothing politically. What would mean something politically is a revocation of student visas of protesting students from Islamic countries, cancellation of green cards of immigrants from Islamic countries, unless they were something like interpreters for the American forces in Afghanistan. What would mean something is a ban on immigration from Islamic countries on grounds of national security. And what would mean something is the denationalization of those who made immigration to the United States on false pretenses, not accepting our Constitution, but who believed in Sharia. They should be denationalized and deported. That would mean something. But let's go back to the Civil War. In the American Civil War, there were members of Congress of the House of Representatives who were removed from Congress by Congress for disloyalty to the United States. They were pro-slavery, they were pro-secession, they were pro-Confederate. And they were removed from the United States Congress for disloyalty to the United States. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Squad, Tlaib, Rashid, Olmert, Presley, Lori Bush, they should be removed from Congress for disloyalty to the United States on the same basis that was employed in the Civil War.
I agree 100%, Jacob, but I don't think there's the political will from the conservative side here in America to confront the naked hatred of people like Tlaib, like the Squad that you listed.
I think the conservatives do, but the Republican rhino establishment does not. We have to make the distinction between a conservative and a rhino.
Yep.
Absolutely. To that point, Darrell Issa, the California rhino, was very reluctant in voting for Tlaib to be even censored.
Yep.
My thought is, Tlaib is a star of the BDS divestment from Israel movement. I was recently, Ken and I were talking about World at War. So I actually grabbed a copy of it, and I was watching the first episode. And what did the brown shirts, the SA, do in 1933? They went around and told Germans, do not buy from these Jewish merchant stores. Do not give them any money. They don't belong in business in Germany.
Okay, but then when you see the human rights abuses, even of women, even of homosexuals in Iran and Saudi Arabia, by Hamas, why is there not a boycott movement of Muslim business and industries? They're guilty of far worse human rights abuses. Why is there no calls and demands to boycott Saudi oil?
I mean, you're absolutely right, Jacob. And to your point, I don't understand how the UN, who is the UN and the world community that's calling Israel war criminals, can't understand how since 2001, 20,000 rockets have been shot into Israel, injuring nearly 2,000 people. When you target civilians, I thought it was a war crime.
Not if they're Jews.
Oh, I see. I see.
United Nations is the United Nothing.
Yeah. The rhetoric of the left has been that because the Palestinians have been oppressed by a colonial power, Israel supposedly, they have an obligation to resist by any means necessary. Thus, they justify the October 7th killing of 1,400 civilians because to them, 1,400 civilians, Israeli civilians, are nothing compared to the oppression of Palestine. Again, a gross spirit of Antichrist, a gross spirit of Haman that detracts from life of Israeli.
It's the spirit of Goebbels. It's the spirit of Saul Alinsky, a left-wing Jew. It's tell the lie often enough and people will believe it. How can an indigenous people be a colonial occupying presence? By definition, they can't be. You must believe the presuppositional lie. You must throw archaeology, the history, the Bible, reality out the window and take on board the presuppositional lie that it is a colonial settlement policy. Ignore the fact that archaeology proves the historical and biblical records that the Jews were there first, and they are the indigenous people. As we always say, Apaches cannot occupy Arizona. Seminoles cannot occupy Florida. And Jews cannot occupy Jericho or Jerusalem or Bethlehem or anywhere in biblical Israel.
Ken, I wanted to ask you, because you and I are both huge fans of World at War. Are you seeing anything that draws you to go to the revelation that we are living in times that are not only biblically based, pointing directly to prophecy, but we're repeating mistakes that there's people alive that still remember what was going on at the time?
Yeah, we're having a Jewish woman was just beat down in I forget what city, and they painted a Star of David on her. I mean, just the stuff that's going on. I don't know if they know
Lyon, France.
Yeah. In France,
Lyon.
Lyon, yep. And I don't know if they know that they're repeating history. They're just it's a next level up though, because it's the whole, in the World at War. There wasn't a whole lot of Jew hatred in America. There was Nazis here and stuff like that might have had some what they might have said some stuff, but it wasn't exactly like Europe altogether. It wasn't like the Nazis. And now you can see that the protests in New York City were crazy.
Not until you introduce the cancer of Islamic immigration.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And
it's crazy.
As I've pointed out to many people, when you add this first wave and you put Palestinians who are more radicalized than that first wave of Islamic immigration, now you have something that can become a powder keg, something that will ignite.
Yes.
I wanted to go ahead and play a video for everyone. I edited some of the things that have been going on in the United States here, as far as pushing towards the youth to be anti-Semites. There we go. In New York, we have a young lady slashing the pictures of kidnapped Israelis.
حسب رايك بنشوف كمان صواريخ فجر في على قلب تل ابيب او شيء؟
ان شاء الله باذن الله ان شاء الله.
اهلا وسهلا فيكم. بدك تختفني؟ والله بنتك سويه ولا كلنا حماس. انا مش قادر افهم هذا. ليه؟ هذا انت ابوها.
سويه من اليوم.
والله؟ قديش عمرها؟
سنه وخمس شهور.
سنه. هي حماس؟
طبعا دمها اخضر.
بسألك مرة ثانية، إذا فقدت بنتك هذه الحبيبة لطيفة، إذا قررت بدها تفجر حالها، أنت بدك تكون فرحان؟
أنا بدعمها وبأيدها بهذا الموقف.
عن جد.
Okay, Apple Store of Irvine, and you have a
Irvine, California.
Supporting Palestine. Right here. Okay, you enjoy? Yes. Where is the manager, please?
I'm one of the managers.
Oh, so why she's wearing this flag?
What was that?
Why she's wearing this flag? You know what is dividing? It is dividing behaving babies. You know what they did? You know what they did? These guys?
So we can go ahead and ask you to go ahead and
Why?
leave. Call security.
Why?
We don't need you to go ahead and harass.
But why? I'm not harassing nobody.
Yeah. So we
No, I'm
can go
not.
ahead and ask
Why you say that? Why you say that? Yes.
So how can we help you outside of this? Yeah.
This is my ID.
Are you picking
Okay.
up some things you don't need?
And pick up. And this is my credit card. And I'm asking you very gently,
Yeah. Look.
why did you let her wear this flag?
Yeah. Look at.
Is she supporting Hamas?
No.
She's not supporting Hamas. So why is she putting this flag? Because Hamas control this place. No? No, I wanna see why.
Looks like we're disturbing.
Because these guys beheaded our babies.
Okay. So we can go
Huh?
ahead and ask you to leave. Or we can ask the security.
It's never happened, so
All right.
yeah.
All right.
If you say this has never happened, Huh? Why you say it's never happened? Did you see it? It's my family.
So we can go ahead and ask you to.
Why are you taking those down?
College campus in America.
Why are you laughing? That's not funny.
Genocide. So.
It's not genocide. They're kidnapped individuals.
This is in the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles a few days ago. We have pro-Palestinian protesters that are beating up pro-Israeli people that were going to see a screening by Gal Gadot. And we have this just a few days ago here in Los Angeles. And it's interesting how the police are nowhere to be found when you have an event like this. Oh, it looks like, oh, there we go. We have some police finally coming in. Finally, the last one that I wanted to show on this one.
We're going to play a game called Hamas.
Black Rock being protested by their creation.
We're going to play a game called Hamas or. There is no law against raping your wife. Is this Hamas or the Taliban?
The Taliban?
The answer was Hamas.
Oh, wonderful.
This law makes it nearly impossible for women and kids to submit claims of incest. Is that Hamas or North Korea?
North Korea?
The answer was Hamas.
Wow.
Women of all ages legally need a male guardian to travel. Is that Hamas or ISIS?
ISIS.
The answer was Hamas.
Oh, yeah, that's...
In an honor killing, it is basically legal for men to murder women and girls if they are promiscuous. Is that Hamas or the Taliban?
Taliban?
The answer was Hamas.
This is a real terrorist organization. They're not freedom fighters.
Hamas was just every one of them.
It seems so unfair for women.
Thanks for educating me.
I think women of color, women generally, LGBTQ individuals, everyone needs to know like who they're supporting.
So, Jacob, Ken, I want to go through these videos one by one. First, let's talk about the woman with the head covering slashing the pictures of the missing people from October 7th. I can see somewhat justification because obviously she is going to be on one side of the equation because of her faith.
Mm-hmm.
But later on we have the Caucasian, obviously not an adherent to Islam, young lady at college ripping them down off of the poster. Now, what I don't understand is how can she be so sure that, either or, it's a terrible thing if these people were kidnapped. And it's terrible when Hamas uses civilians as shields to continue their fight with Israel.
Look, we saw that guy holding his precious little baby daughter saying that if he grows up to be a suicide bomber, he's going to encourage it and help her. That is the mentality of these people. That is their religion, and that is their mentality. Those are the people that George Bush wanted in the country after September 11th. Let's go back and put the first blame where it belongs. The Bush family, the Bush dynasty, the Bush administration. That's where it began. But that was continued by Clinton. It was continued certainly by Obama. It's continued now by Biden. It's not Democrat, Republican. It's our own corrupt government letting people like that into the country. They should have been kicked out after September 11th.
I have nothing to add. I was going to say the exact same thing. I was gonna point out that it's demonic. It's a demonic base.
Just to follow up with the Black Rock. Now, it's a great example of something coming back that you've created and your creation destroying you. To my knowledge, I don't think BlackRock is a pro-Israeli company at all. But yet, why do you think that these protesters are putting the blame of Palestinian genocide solely at the feet of BlackRock? Is it just misguided youth?
You're dealing with ignorance and stupidity. You're dealing not only with the school system, but a university system designed to engender stupidity. People who are incapable of rational thought. They just subscribe to narratives. They don't know how to think analytically or critically or arrive at a conclusion based on fact. That is what this generation has been turned into by the school system, by the teachers' unions, by the universities. That is what has happened. They just don't know any better. They're too stupid.
Yeah.
And they're the generation that will accept the Antichrist, or their kids.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep going down.
Yeah. It was the pop quiz that the gentleman did with the young college students is the only glimmer that I saw, is educating these kids. This is the person that you're chanting for from the river to the sea. These are the people that you want to support. These are the people that you are so passionate for. This is what they stand for. Do you want to continue to stand with them? And I hope the message can get out there that this is not something that we should be taking on as virtuous to support this ideology that Hamas tries to propagate to the world. Along that same lines, I wanted to just take a quick look at France. You already mentioned that a woman was beaten in Lyons, but also a Jewish woman in her 30s was attacked in her own home in Montluc, a district of France, stabbed, and a swastika painted on her door by her attacker. She was stabbed twice in the abdomen, and according to the media in France, her injuries were considered serious, though not life-threatening. This goes on the back. In the past few years, we've seen a huge rise of attack of Jewish people in France, which, as Jacob, you've talked about it before, France's past is kind of spotty when it comes to Jewish people to begin with. But the immigration crisis we're seeing in France has brought this all back like a ghost.
Well, the Vichy French cooperated with the Nazis. Let's remember that. There was many French who were, you had the Gauls people who were against the Nazis, but the Vichy French were pro-Nazis. And in many areas of France, you had as many people who were pro-Nazi, others who just didn't want to get involved and were happy to let the Nazis take their country over. But it was really a minority of the people in France who were anti-Nazi. That is their history. About 3 years ago in France, there was another Jewish woman, a school teacher, who was murdered by an Arab Muslim in her home. And he was found not guilty because he had diminished responsibility because he was stoned on cannabis at the time. Now, why was a person like that not guillotined?
French Foreign Legion at the very least.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to add that the far right-leaning leader, Marine Le Pen, who, as Jacob pointed out, her father has a terrible record on anti-Semitism. But at least we can say for Marine, she's being protested because she plans to attend a weekend march to protest the rising anti-Semitism in France.
That's right.
So it's a very interesting dichotomy that we're seeing in France. Someone being protested because they want to talk about hatred and the rising hatred, and they're protesting. I wonder who the protesters will be.
I wonder.
I want to go to our war update now. There's been a ceasefire called for by the Biden administration, and Israel has decided to accommodate it. Jacob, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, again, let's remember, Barack Obama funded Iran in order to fund Hamas and Hezbollah. Barack Obama funded this. That was Obama. You've got Iranian spies with security clearances in the Obama administration. They were in the Obama administration, and they are now the same people in the Biden administration. This includes Ariane Tabatabai. She is the chief of staff of the Secretary of Defense for Special Operations. She has a security clearance.
Mm-hmm.
You also have Robert Malley. Now, why are these people not indicted for espionage? What about Valerie Jarrett? We are talking here of betrayal, not of Israel, but of the United States by Barack Obama. Secondly, we're talking about betrayal of the United States by the Biden administration. He's put over $100 billion by not enforcing the embargoes, plus the money he's given to Iran. Remember, Iran is the #1 sponsor of radical Islamic terror, and the Biden and Obama administrations are the #1 financial sponsors of Iran. We are talking about the moral equivalent of treason in the thinking of many people. Betrayal. Now, this betrayal is not limited to them. It's other, Clinton certainly, Bush certainly, but primarily Obama and Biden. Obama came out and made a statement, and he said the unbearable Israeli occupation. The man is an unprincipled liar. Israel was not occupying Gaza. There were no Israelis in it. They had an open border. They allowed food, water, medical supplies, and fuel to cross the border, and they allowed 17,000 to 18,000 Gazans a day to cross the border to work at jobs in Israel. Obama is a completely detestable, unprincipled liar. But because he said it, there's enough stupid people who are going to agree with him just because he said it. Brain dead morons. This is what you are dealing with. Obama has always been an enemy of Israel. Now Alan Dershowitz admits he's an enemy of Israel. And Alan Dershowitz was one of those naive, gullible, liberal American Jews who voted for Obama and for Biden. Now he sees what they are. Well, if he was a smart Jew, like Ben Shapiro or Dennis Prager, he would have known what Obama and Biden were 10, 12, 15 years ago. This is what you've got. It is unbelievable. What they want is a hudna in their thinking. They want a chance to reorganize and regroup and rearm to continue the jihad and to prevent from being wiped out by the Israelis. And Biden wants to give it to them. Jake Sullivan wants to give it to them. Austin wants to give it to them. Blinken wants to give it to them. They want Hamas to survive. They want Hamas to be able to reorganize and rearm. They want to continue funding Iran. Everything that Biden said that was pro-Israel is simply political theater because it's an election year next year. Maybe some stupid Democrat Party Jews who've been so stupid, like Alan Dershowitz, are beginning to be confronted with the undeniable truth now and recognize their own stupidity for what it was and what it is. Some. This is the reality. The Joe Obama administration is anti-Israel, and they are pro-Iranian. Talk is cheap. Don't look at what politicians say. They're going to lie or say whatever politically expedient. It doesn't matter what politicians say. Watch what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And they fund terror.
You know, Jacob, you mentioned Ben Shapiro. I just want to give a little bit of credit to one of my favorites, is the adorable curmudgeon that he is, Michael Savage. Another one that saw right through Obama. And sees right through Joe Biden, for that matter, as well.
Absolutely.
Good rants.
Great rants.
Great rants.
Great rants.
Great rants. I tune in for the rants.
Michael Savage coined the phrase San Francisco.
Yeah, he did.
Oh,
and my personal favorite, liberalism is a mental disorder.
Yeah,
oh,
right.
yeah.
I've got that book.
I do too.
Oh, my gosh. Yep.
Now, I just going back to the war update real quick, gentlemen. The attacks on the bases in Syria and Iraq. This is all happening as the Biden administration is calling for a ceasefire. Do you think that this is motivated because of the attacks? Or do you think that the U.S. is very scared of a widening war?
I think the latter. Let's face it. If Donald Trump had been reelected, there would be no disaster in Afghanistan that we had courtesy of Biden. There would be no war in the Ukraine courtesy of Biden and his weakness. And Iran would not be doing this with Hezbollah and Hamas if Trump was president. The left won't tell you that. The mainstream media won't tell you that. I'm not singing all the praises of Donald Trump. I'm not planning to vote for him again for certain reasons. But if he'd been president, none of this would have happened. The villains smell blood. They see a senile corruptocrat who was, even before he was half senile, he was never too bright. He was never too smart of a person. But now they see somebody who's not too bright and who's half senile, if not out and out stupid. He's faltering physically, and he's weak, and they just see opportunity. He's manipulated by people who mean America no good, in my opinion, like Jake Sullivan, like Susan Rice. Obama is still pulling many of the strings.
Yes.
Biden doesn't have the wherewithal or the brains to do it. This is the reality of what is happening. They see weakness. Concerning the attacks on the American bases, of which there's been nearly 50 in the last few weeks. What do you see? They're shooting bazookas. They're shooting rockets. You retaliate with a pea shooter. Trump stood up to Iran. He knew Iran was on back of this, and he went after the head of the snake. You shoot the octopus in the eye. You don't wrestle with its arms.
Absolutely.
And John Kirby is the new Goebbels. John Kirby just straight up lied.
Sure.
Doesn't even know what his own newsrooms are reporting. Crazy.
And finally,
odd times. Odd times.
It is truly odd times.
Odd times.
Since he did bring up the war in Ukraine, I'm gonna have to share. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but I'm gonna have to now. Just want to show you a meme. Everybody knows this meme.
That's it. Yep.
It's been there 1,000 times, but very relevant. It's the distracted boyfriend meme, and
yes.
we can see in the face of this young lady, the girlfriend, that's Zelensky looking at the United States.
Have you seen Zelensky talk lately? I mean, he's desperate.
Yeah.
It's sad to watch him on. I watched him on Twitter today, and it was sad to see him. It was really sad.
He is a girlfriend scorned at this point.
Yeah, he is. Yep.
You brought this up, Ken. Talk to us about the 39-year Intel analyst, and what he says, his prediction for the coming.
Yeah, I'm just gonna I'm gonna read what I wrote on my podcast, and we didn't get to this story, but he said there will be a multiple terrorist attack in the U.S. over the next 14 months. And that's a pretty bold statement, but Tony Segura, he's been an Intel analyst for 39 years, he jumped on his X, formerly Twitter, account this week to warn that we are on the eve of a wave after wave of terror attacks on the homeland. So he's not alone, of course. There's other people predicting stuff too. This post will be attacked by the left, the Marxists, the trolls, Antifa, BLM, even intelligence community, he said. And he also said, rarely can I guarantee the intelligence, but with as close to 100% confidence as possible, there will be multiple terrorist attacks in the U.S. And the attacks will come in waves from next. He predicts, that this, railways, prison, water, grid poisoning, water supplies, main highway arteries. Additionally, at least a million, possible 2 million terrorists are already here from Palestine, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Qatar, Lebanon, Iran, Somalia, blah, blah, blah. And, he just kept going on and on and on. So, but he predicted multiple terrorist attacks, and he's a pretty smart guy. I follow him on Twitter. So his name's Tony Segura.
What's the injustice? Mayorkas, Biden,
yes,
Obama, and George Bush and Clinton will not be held accountable.
Nope, all of them.
Not closing immigration.
They get the split. They get the skate. Yep. Totally. It's crazy.
Just wanted to remind everybody that we will be taking questions in backstage. So please, I've got a few questions that have already been submitted for Jacob. And if you have any more, please ask them now. Also, we have 2 really intriguing stories that we hope to get to in backstage. Obviously, the channels that have already covered the topics that we want to cover have been banned from YouTube, so we will not be talking about them on this side. But if you'd like to hear some of the things that YouTube doesn't want you to hear, or Facebook for that matter, please join us in backstage. Moving on to our final topic here today. I have a video that I would like to show. It kind of is a progression that we've seen. In Britain and in the world, there is a movement called Stop Oil. And we're seeing a progression in their antics. And for the first time, I think we're seeing the counter reaction to what they've been doing. So bear with me. I will grab that video and we will play it. This is that one. October 26, 2022. This is, let's call this a beginning, juvenile. Still juvenile.
When people can't even afford to eat or heat their homes, and when people all over the world are suffering and dying because of the devastating impacts of the climate crisis, the government needs to step up. Inequality is what's driving the climate crisis.
Move!
doing this? What else can we do? We've got to stop this madness, you know.
Nobody is listening to us. The messages are clear. The scientists tell us, just this last week in the news. The UN have said we're running out of time. People are dying across the world, and soon it will be our turn. So even if we here in London don't care anything about the rest of the world, we must care about ourselves. I care about the rest of the world. I believe everybody else cares about the rest of the world. And I believe that they have just got their heads in the sand because they are so busy with business as usual that they can't bear to think about the real consequences of the way we are trying to live our lives, a way that's completely unsustainable.
The government has taken our future. I want our future back. It's criminal inaction on the climate crisis. The UN say you need to act. The IPCC say you need to act. The IMF, the World Bank all say you need to act. And yet the government does nothing. What does it do? It issues new fossil fuel licenses. It says we need to drain every last drop of oil out of the North Sea. That goes against everything that all of these internationally respected bodies are telling us. And here I am, an ordinary person, having to do this. You think I like it? No. This is something that I feel is a duty that I have to do as a citizen of the UK when our government is criminal.
He loves the attention.
I'm furious. And I'm devastated.
Yeah. This year, 2023, still with the orange paint spraying everywhere. But they graduated from that.
Women did not get the vote by voting. It is time for deeds and not words. It is time to just stop oil.
Politics is failing us. Politics failed women in 1914. If millions will die due to new oil and gas licensing, millions! If we love history, if we love art, and if we love our families, we must just stop oil.
Leave the room immediately, please. You need to leave the room, please. Ladies and gentlemen.
It's not shown in here.
This room is closed. Head to the exit, please. You need to leave the room, please. This room is closed. You need to leave the room, please, sir.
Fella, you need to get on there because your activity's stopping an ambulance getting through. Can you get up? Get up and get on there. We need to move the vehicle.
Sir, there's an ambulance behind us.
Let's pick him up and get him on.
Ambulance coming.
Now, this last image happened in Colombia, or Panama, excuse me. These environmental protesters were blocking the road in a new mine that is in Panama, and a motorist, he just lost it. He pulled out a gun and shot the environmentalists, or one of the environmentalists. Now,
Two, I believe.
Two? Okay, I did not know there were two of them.
Only two?
My question to you, Ken, Jacob, I think we're going to start seeing this a little bit more. I think people are running out of tolerance of this. It started with graffiti. It's moved on to destruction of property. Now the blocking of vital byways. I think that's going to be the step. The straw that breaks the camel's back. And I think this man in Panama is a perfect illustration. It's as they continue to affect more and more people. Ken, you even stated this. They're going to run into those people that are the wrong people to mess with.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I bring this up because I also think that's the same thing we're going to see with the pro-Palestinian movement. They're going to push this agenda as long as people are meekly accepting it. But the moment they run into, as Jacob has said, that right wing, that far right wing portion that they're feeding, is going to have a reaction to this at some point.
Yes. And there will be balkanization, I believe, in even if it's not for real, where we balkanize legally or whatever, but there will be balkanization in certain cities. I can see that.
Absolutely. So, Jacob, any comment on this with the Stop Oil and all? It all fits into the same picture. It's the gross.
Let's talk about Stop Oil. Okay, you have a right to protest, but you don't have a right to destroy art or attack people's businesses. You don't have a right to do that. That's not protest. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you want to stop the oil? What do you want to do? Get electric vehicles? Okay. Where do you get the electricity for the electric vehicles? You either burn coal or you burn oil or you go nuclear. Where's the energy going to come from? Are these really that stupid as they think electricity comes from a wall? Well, actually, they really are that stupid. There needs to be viable alternatives, yes, but they're not going to happen overnight. These are absurd expressions by ignorant people who don't know what they're doing. That's to begin with. You're just dealing with stupid people. If they're going to behave in a violent manner, they need to be dealt with appropriately. Not 6 months in jail, 10 years in jail, 10 years in prison for that kind of vandalism, malicious vandalism. 10 years and no early parole. I don't care if they're young or old. That's what they did. 10 years hard labor. You don't labor, you don't eat. I don't care about them. They have engaged in not peaceful protest. What they have engaged in is violating the rights of others and of the citizenry. Mm-hmm. Secondly, nobody likes the racist right or anything like that. But you are creating sympathy for them. You are pushing people into the hands of the extreme right. That's what happened in Weimar, Germany. That is in part how Hitler and Mussolini got power. Mm-hmm. You push people into the hands of these extremists. If governments will not defend people from the left, people will have to defend themselves, and they will flock to people who will defend them. That is what you wind up with.
Exactly right.
All right. Well, thank you, Jacob. That concludes the segment of things that we can actually talk about on this side. Please join us backstage for not only the questions, but our last two topics, which I'm sure if you haven't heard about them, you want to know about them, especially if you are a believer and have children. Anyway, thank you so much to our people that are still on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you so much for watching us. We appreciate you. Please We gave you we're going to put links inside the chats. Please grab them and join us on Rumble. And you can always catch us on Moriel.tv. Press the word video and then live. And you can watch Backstage and everything on our platform as well. So thank you so much for watching. We will be back to Backstage in just a few minutes. Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.